"You're not what was ordered." The foreman said it loud enough for every man in the yard to hear. Cora Morgan didn't flinch. She stood in the dust of Roan Fork Ranch with a 5-year-old girl on her hip and one trunk at her feet, and she looked at the man who had just dismissed her in 8 words, then past him, straight at the rancher, standing cold and silent in the doorway. "No," she said. "I'm not." She set Lily down, straightened her spine. "But your kitchen hasn't had a real cook in over a year, and your men look like it." Nobody moved. "Let me cook one meal," she said. "Then decide." If you've ever been judged before, you had a chance to prove yourself, this story is for you. Subscribe to our channel, follow this story all the way to the end, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The telegram had said, "Widow experienced references available upon request." It had not said plain. It had not said tired. It had not said traveling with a child small enough to fit inside a flour sack with room to spare. Wesley Hale read that telegram now from the doorway of his ranch house, holding it between 2 fingers, like it had personally offended him, and stared at the woman standing in his yard. She was 32 years old, maybe 33. Her dress was clean, but worn at the elbows. Her hair was pulled back with the kind of efficiency that had nothing to do with vanity and everything to do with practicality. She stood straight, not proud, not defiant, just straight the way a woman stands when she's spent years making sure nobody could read her face. The little girl at her side had her mother's eyes, brown and watchful and missing absolutely nothing. Wesley said nothing for a long moment. Behind him, Boone Carter leaned against the doorframe of the bunkhouse, arms crossed, chewing on a piece of dried grass. He'd been with the Roan Fork since before the roof was raised. He knew what Wesley's silence meant. It meant the man was already looking for a reason to say no. Cap Reeves got there first. Cap was the foreman, 48 years old, built like a fence post with a jaw that looked like it had been carved out of red cedar. He walked across the yard slowly, deliberately, the way a man walks when he wants the other person to feel the weight of every step. He stopped 6 feet from Cora. He looked at the trunk. He looked at the girl. He looked at Cora. He said, "You the one that answered the posting?" "I am," Cora said. It said, "Experienced cook, ranch work, full outfit." "I read it the same as you?" Cap turned his head slightly and called back toward the bunkhouse without raising his voice much. "Hatch, come out here." A younger hand, barely 20, with red ears and a permanent sunburn, appeared in the bunkhouse doorway. "You see this?" Cap said. He wasn't pointing at Cora rudely. He was just gesturing, in a way that was worse than rude because it was so casual. Hatch looked at Cora, then at the little girl, then back at Cap. "Yes, sir." "That what you expected?" Hatch had the decency to look uncomfortable. "No, sir." "No," Cap agreed. He turned back to Cora. His voice wasn't cruel. That was the thing about Cap Reeves. He was never cruel. He was just honest in a way that cut like a paring knife. "Ma'am, this is a working ranch. 16 men, sometimes more, during roundup. The last cook we had was a man named Dooley, who'd been doing this 30 years. Before him, a man named Pickett. We've never had a—" He stopped. "A what?" Cora said pleasantly. Cap looked at the little girl, then back at Cora. "We've never had this situation." "There's a first time for everything," Cora said. "Where's the kitchen?" "Oz." That was the moment Wesley Hale stepped off the porch. He came down the 2 steps slowly, and the yard got a little quieter when he did. Not because the men were afraid of him. They weren't exactly. It was more that Wesley Hale carried a particular kind of stillness that made other people go still around him, like the way a storm front changes the air pressure before the rain ever starts. He was 40 years old and looked it not in a broken way, but in the way of a man who had done 40 years of real work. His hands were rough. His eyes were gray. His wife had been dead for 2 years, and in those 2 years, Roan Fork Ranch had slowly, quietly begun coming apart at the seams. He stopped in front of Cora. He did not offer his hand. "Mr. Hale, she said. Mrs. Morgan. He looked at the girl. You didn't mention a child. The posting didn't say not to bring one. It didn't say to bring one either. No, Cora agreed. It didn't. Wesley looked at her for a long moment. She held his gaze not aggressively, not challengingly, just steadily, the way you hold a flame in the wind. How old? He asked. 5? Cora said. Her name is Lily. She won't be in anyone's way. My kitchen isn't a nursery. No, Cora said. But your kitchen is also not functioning from what I was told. So at this particular moment, Mr. Hale, you're not in a position to be particular about what comes with the cook. The yard went absolutely silent. Cap Reeves stopped chewing. Hatch appeared to briefly forget how breathing worked. Wesley stared at her. And Cora, without changing her expression, even slightly said, Let me cook you one meal. After that, decide. Wesley said nothing for 3 full seconds. Then he said, The kitchen's around back. And he walked away, son. Boone Carter pushed off the bunkhouse doorframe and fell into step beside Cora as she picked up her trunk handle. He was a big man, gray-haired now, with a face full of old weather and old experience. I'll carry that, he said. I've got it. I know you've got it, he said. I'm offering to carry it anyway. She looked at him sideways. He had kind eyes, she decided. Not soft. Kind. There was a difference. Boone Carter, he said. I've been here since the beginning. Cora Morgan. I know who you are. He reached down and took the other handle of the trunk without asking again. You cooked before real cooking. Not just family meals. I ran the kitchen at the Drover's Rest in Abilene for 4 years, she said. Before that, I cooked for a sheep outfit in the Panhandle. 32 men, 3 meals a day, 7 days a week. Boone's eyebrows went up, just slightly. Sheep outfit. A man's money spends the same whether he runs cattle or sheep, Cora said. And a hungry man is a hungry man. Boone Carter smiled. It was a small smile, a private one, the kind that means I was right about you. He didn't say that out loud, but she heard it anyway. The kitchen was a disaster. Not dirty exactly, someone had swept recently, but it had the particular feel of a place that had been abandoned midway through being maintained like a garden where the weeding had stopped and the grass was beginning to win. Pots were stacked without logic. The flour barrel was half full but uncovered. The fire in the cast iron stove had gone out sometime that morning, and the grease trap hadn't been emptied in. She didn't want to estimate how long. She set her trunk down. Lily stood in the doorway, taking everything in with those watchful brown eyes. Don't touch anything yet, Cora told her. I know, Mama. And if any of the men come in, I stay out of the way, Lily said like she'd said it 100 times. Because she had. Cora tied her apron strings and looked at the stove. Then she looked at the fire supplies. Then she rolled her sleeves up. Hatch appeared in the doorway 20 minutes later with the particular expression of a man who had been sent to do something he considered pointless. Cap wants to know if you need anything, he said. Wood, Cora said, without looking up from the flour she was sifting. Good dry hardwood, not green pine. 2 armloads. And a bucket of water from the well cold, not warm. Hatch blinked. Ma'am, the woods. And I need to know what supplies are in the cellar, she continued. All of them. Not what you think is down there. What's actually there. Can you do that? Yes, ma'am? Good. Go. Hatch went. He came back 10 minutes later with the wood, the water, and a handwritten inventory that looked like it had been written in a panic. She took it from him, scanned it in 15 seconds, handed it back. The salt pork, she said. How much is actually left? Maybe 40 pounds. And the dried beans. 2 sacks, maybe a third of one more. Coffee. Low, maybe enough for a week. Someone needs to go into town tomorrow morning, she said. I'll write the list tonight. Ma'am, that's Cap's decision. She looked at him. Yes. And when Cap asks why you didn't tell him about the supplies situation, what will you say? Hatch opened his mouth, closed it. Tell him, she said. He'll go. The fire was going by the time the hands came in from the afternoon work. She heard them before she saw them, the sound of boots on hard ground, of voices dropping to a lower register as they passed by the kitchen side of the house. A few of them slowed down. She could feel it. Then one of them, she didn't know his name yet, leaned around the doorframe and sniffed the air. What is that smell? Supper, she said. Smells like actual supper. That's because it is actual supper. He disappeared. She heard him say something to the men behind him. She couldn't make out the words, but she heard the tone. Surprised. Not convinced exactly, but surprised. She kept working. Cap Reeves came to the kitchen door at 6:15. He didn't knock. He stood in the doorway with his arms crossed and watched her plate the food venison stew biscuits that had actually risen dried apple slices cooked down with a little sugar and cinnamon she'd found in the back of the spice shelf. Where'd you find cinnamon? He said. Behind the nutmeg. We have nutmeg. You do now. He was quiet for a moment. Dooley never made biscuits like that. Dooley's not here, she said. No, Cap said. He isn't. He didn't say it with grief, exactly, more like with the tired acknowledgement of a man who has accepted that everything changes, whether he wants it to or not. How many tonight? She asked. 11. 4 men are still out on the north line. I'll keep plates warm. Cap uncrossed his arms. He said slowly, the wood stove in the bunkhouse needs a new flue pipe. It's been smoking back. The men. I'll look at it tomorrow, she said. He stared at her. You know stove work? I know enough, she said. Go eat, Mr. Reeves. She watched them eat from the kitchen doorway. That was the thing about feeding people. The real information never came from what they said. It came from the first moment, the first bite, the way the body responds before the mind can arrange a polite expression. Hatch took one bite of the biscuit and stopped talking mid-sentence. A hand named Russ, who had the look of a man who complained about everything as a matter of personal philosophy, picked up his coffee cup, put it down, and picked it up again. The bunkhouse got quieter. Not silent, but quieter. And Cap Reeves, who had not said one genuinely warm thing to her since she arrived, sat at the far end of the table, and she watched him eat 2 full plates without once looking up. Wesley Hale ate alone. He always ate alone now. He came to the kitchen after the men had cleared out, the way he'd clearly gotten used to doing, arriving late, taking whatever was left, eating in a silence he'd built around himself like a second wall. She'd kept his plate warm. He sat down without thanking her. She went back to cleaning the pots. He ate 3 bites before he stopped. She heard the fork go down. Mrs. Morgan? Mr. Hale. He was quiet for a moment. Where did you train? I didn't train anywhere, she said. I just cooked. For how long? Since I was 10 years old. She rinsed a pot and set it down. My mother was sick for 6 years before she died. There were 4 of us to feed. Wesley said nothing. I cooked at the Drover's Rest in Abilene after that, she said. And before I came here I spent 2 years in Meridian cooking for a family of 8. The husband died in the spring. They didn't need me anymore. So you answered a posting. So I answered a posting. He picked up the fork again, ate another bite, put the fork down again. Your husband, he said, not gently, but not harshly either, just factually. What happened? She was quiet for a moment. Fever, she said. 3 years ago. Lily was 2. I'm sorry. So was I, she said. For a long time. She paused. Are you going to let us stay, Mr. Hale? He looked at her, then really looked at her. She turned from the pots and held the look. 1 week, he said. We'll see how the week goes. Fair enough, she said. He stood pushed in the chair. At the kitchen door he stopped. The biscuits, he said. She waited. They were good, he said. and walked out. Lily was asleep in the small room off the back of the kitchen, barely bigger than a closet, but with a bed and a window, which was more than they'd had in the boarding house in Abilene. Cora sat on the edge of that bed for a long time after the ranch went quiet. She listened to her daughter breathe. She thought about the way Wesley Hale had looked at her in the yard. Not with contempt exactly. With something more complicated. With the particular expression of a man who has made up his mind to feel nothing and is briefly inconveniently interrupted by feeling something. She had seen that look before, in the mirror once. She touched Lily's hair, gently smoothing it back. 1 week, she whispered to the dark. We've had less. By Thursday, she had the kitchen running like a system. Breakfast at 5:30, sharp biscuits, eggs. When there were eggs. Salt pork coffee that was strong enough to peel the bark off a pine tree. Midday meal delivered to the field on days when the men were working the east pasture. Supper at 6, always hot, always enough. The men had stopped betting on when she'd leave, not because they'd warmed to her entirely. Cowboys were stubborn creatures, and warming to change was not in their nature, but because the evidence was accumulating in a way that was hard to argue with. They were eating better than they had in over a year. They were working harder because they knew something hot was waiting at the end of it. The bunkhouse was warmer. She had in fact fixed the stove flue herself with Boone's help, and a piece of pipe she'd found rusting in the tool shed. Cap Reeves noticed all of this. He came to the kitchen on Thursday afternoon while she was preparing dough for Friday's bread. "The men are asking," he said, which was Cap's way of saying, "I am asking, but I don't want to say so." "Asking what?" she said. "Whether you're staying." She kept kneading. "That's Mr. Hale's decision." "He's not one to make decisions quickly," Cap said. "Since Martha died, he's not the same as he was." She looked up at that. It was the first time anyone had said his wife's name out loud. "Martha," she said. "She ran this place," Cap said. "Not Wesley. I mean, he ran it. But she—" He stopped, started again. "She held it together, the way women do, and when she was gone, something went—" He shook his head. "He keeps working, but something's gone out of it." Cora looked at him for a long moment. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "Because," Cap said, "I don't want you to take the quiet personally." She turned back to her dough. "I don't," she said. "I've met grief before, Mr. Reeves. It doesn't scare me." Boone found her at the well on Friday morning before the sun was fully up. He was leaning against the post with 2 cups of coffee, and he handed her one without asking. She took it. "You heard the weather report coming out of Laredo," he said. It wasn't a question. "I heard the hands talking," she said. "Storm front. How bad?" "Oh, bad enough," Boone said. "Northern boys will be coming back in off the trail. Could be the whole crew by Sunday." "How many?" 16, maybe 18 if the Ortega brothers came up with the herd. She held the coffee cup in both hands and looked at the horizon where the light was beginning to go that particular flat gray color that meant the weather was already changing. "That's a lot of cold, hungry men," she said. "It is," Boone agreed. "You ever cook for an outfit that size in a hurry?" "Once," she said. "In Abilene. A cattle drive came in 2 days early, 31 men. I had 6 hours. Boone was quiet for a moment. "What happened?" "They ate," she said. He smiled again, that same small private smile. "You're something, Mrs. Morgan." "I'm a cook," she said. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves." She started her supply list that afternoon. She was 3 lines in when Wesley Hale appeared in the kitchen doorway. Appeared. She'd noticed it all week. He moved quietly, for a big man arrived in doorways without announcing himself, stood there a moment as if deciding whether the room was worth entering. "What are you writing?" he said. "Supply list for the storm," she said. "Someone needs to get into town tomorrow morning. Early." He came into the kitchen, looked over her shoulder at the list, not reading it closely yet, just looking at the length of it. "That's a long list," he said. It's a big outfit, she said. And your cellar is low. I've been working with what was here, but if those men come back in a storm and I'm short on flour or salt pork or coffee. I know, he said. Do you? She set the pencil down and looked at him. Because someone let the supply situation go, Mr. Hale, for a while. And I'm not saying that to criticize, I'm saying it because we need to fix it before Sunday. He didn't flinch. He just looked at her with those gray eyes. You're right, he said. I let it go. She hadn't expected that the straightforwardness of it. She picked her pencil back up. I'll have the list finished by tonight, she said. If you can send someone first thing tomorrow. I'll go myself, he said. She looked up again. I need to speak to the supplier anyway, he said, and I trust my own eye for quality more than I trust anyone else's. Take the full list, she said. Don't substitute unless you have to. And if there's no good salt pork, get the smoked beef instead. It'll work better in the stew. He almost smiled. It wasn't quite a smile, it was the shape a smile makes before it decides to commit. You have opinions about smoked beef, he said. I have opinions about everything, she said. It's a professional hazard. This time he did smile. Small, brief, gone in 2 seconds. But she saw it. That night, Lily tugged on her sleeve while she was banking the stove coals. Mama? The man with the gray eyes. Mr. Hale. He watches you when you're not looking. Cora paused, resumed. He's making sure I'm doing my job, she said. Lily considered this with the gravity of a 5-year-old doing serious philosophical work. He looks sad, Lily said. He is sad, Cora said. Some people carry a big sadness for a long time. Like you did. Like I did, Cora said. Like I did. She lifted Lily up and carried her toward bed. Is he going to let us stay, Mama? Cora tucked the blanket around her daughter's shoulders. I think so, she said quietly. How do you know? Cora thought about biscuits. About a man with gray eyes who had said they were good in the particular tone of a person who had forgotten what good felt like and was startled by the reminder. Because, she said, I haven't given him a reason to say no. She sat with Lily until the little girl's breathing slowed and deepened into sleep. Then she went back to the kitchen, lit one candle, and started the bread dough that needed to be set before morning. Outside, the wind had changed direction. She felt it through the walls, not cold yet, but coming. The kind of wind that doesn't announce itself until it's already arrived. 16 men, maybe 18. She counted her flour, counted her salt pork, started calculating. The bread dough was ready by 4 in the morning. Cora hadn't slept. Not because she couldn't. She'd learned years ago to sleep in short pieces the way you eat a meal when you're working fast, efficient enough to keep going. But tonight, she hadn't tried. She'd sat in the kitchen with one candle and her calculations and the slowly rising dough, and she'd listened to the wind change character 3 times between midnight and dawn. By the time the ranch stirred, she had biscuits in the oven, coffee on the boil, and a pot of oats with dried fruit that she'd found in a tin at the very back of the highest shelf, still good barely. She'd cooked them down slow with a little molasses, and they smelled like something a person's grandmother might have made on a cold morning, which was exactly the point. Hatch was the first one through the kitchen door. He stopped so fast the man behind him walked into his back. Move, the second man said. Just smell that, Hatch said. I'm smelling it. Move. They poured in 6 of them, then 8, pulling off their hats without being told, which Cora had noticed was a thing they only did when they weren't thinking about it. When manners came from muscle memory instead of performance. She handed out plates without ceremony. Russ, the one with the permanent complaint, took his plate, looked at it, looked at her, and said, Molasses oats. That's right, she said. My mother made molasses oats, he said. A lot of mothers did, she said. He sat down. He didn't say anything else. He just ate, and the expression on his face was the expression of a man briefly, unexpectedly returned to somewhere he thought he'd never get back to. Cora watched it happen and turned back to the stove. That was the power of food, and she had never once taken it lightly. It wasn't about impressing people. It was about the 2 seconds after the first bite, when a person's guard went completely down. When they stopped being a ranch hand, or a skeptic, or a grieving widower, or an unwanted stranger. When they were just human, hungry and fed and briefly purely glad. She lived for those 2 seconds. Wesley left for town before 6. He came through the kitchen door with his coat on and his hat in his hand, and she held out the supply list without looking up from the biscuit she was pulling from the oven. He took it. "Anything you want me to add?" he said. "There's a notation on the back about the coffee," she said. "If McAllister's has the dark roast from San Antonio, get that. If not, get whatever's freshest, not the stuff that's been sitting. You can tell by the smell." "I know how to buy coffee," he said. "Then you know not to buy stale coffee," she said. "We agree." He almost said something. She could feel the almost of it, the slight intake of breath, the pause. Then he put his hat on and walked out. Boone appeared at the door 30 seconds later, watching Wesley ride out through the yard. "He's been into town maybe twice since Martha died," Boone said quietly. "Sends the hands for supplies." Cora set the biscuit pan on the cooling rack. "How long ago did she die?" she asked. She knew the answer 2 years. She'd calculated it from what Cap had said, but she wanted to hear how Boone said it. 2 years in March, Boone said. "Fever. Fast." He paused. "Wesley got the message by telegraph. He was out at the North Line. By the time he rode back..." He stopped. "She was already gone," Cora said. "He never got to say goodbye," Boone said. "I think that's the part that won't heal right." Cora was quiet for a moment. She understood that particular wound, not from personal experience exactly, but from the way grief has textures, and the texture of not getting to say goodbye was one she recognized. It had a way of turning into something hard and permanent inside a person. Not sharp anymore, just heavy. "He'll be all right," she said. "Eventually." Boone looked at her. "You sound sure about that." "I'm not," she said. "But I found it's useful to act like it."
Come on.
Cap Reeves called for a half day on the east fence line, which meant the hands were back in the yard by early afternoon, more of them than usual, with more time than usual on their hands, which was never a situation that improved anybody's manners. Cora was in the kitchen making lunch when she heard them start. It was Denny who started it. Denny was 23, lean, with a quick mouth and the slightly unfinished quality of a young man who had learned too early that being loud was the same as being interesting. "Hey, Hatch," she heard him say. "You think the widow knows how to make a real beef stew, or just that? Whatever that was with the apples." "The apple cobbler," Hatch said cautiously. "Right, the cobbler. Very fancy. Very, what's the word, domestic." "It was good," Hatch said. "Sure it was good. I'm not saying it wasn't good. I'm saying Dooley could cook a beef haunch that'd make a man feel like he'd done something. That cobbler made me feel like I was at a church social." A few of the men laughed. Cora kept cutting the onions, steady, slow. "You going to say something?" Lily asked. She was sitting in the corner with a piece of string she'd been braiding all morning, looking up at her mother with those careful eyes. "No," Cora said. "They're being rude." "They're being something," Cora said. "It's not the same as being rude. Rude means they know better. These boys just don't know yet." "Know what?" "What I can do." She sent lunch out at noon. A beef and potato soup, thick enough to stand a spoon in, with the bread she'd set the night before baked that morning, dense and brown, and hot enough to steam when you broke it. She'd made 2 loaves extra because she knew how men were with good bread. The extra 2 loaves were gone in 4 minutes. Denny came to the kitchen door himself, not to apologize, that wasn't something Denny was built for yet, but to ask if there was more bread. "There isn't," she said. He looked genuinely disappointed. It was, she thought, the most honest expression she'd seen on his face. "Could you make more tomorrow?" he said. "I'm making bread every day," she said. Whether there's extra depends on whether the first 2 loaves last longer than 4 minutes. He opened his mouth, closed it. His ears went red. "Yes, ma'am," he said, and left. She turned back to the stove. "He said yes, ma'am," Lily said, surprised. "I noticed," Cora said. "Batoto." The afternoon was when Cap came to her with the ledger. She hadn't expected that. She'd been pulling apart a tough piece of cured beef, examining the quality, calculating how far it would stretch, when Cap came in and set a worn leather ledger on the kitchen table without explanation. She looked at it, looked at him. "What's this?" she said. "Supply records," he said. "Last 2 years." She wiped her hands on her apron and opened it, ran her finger down the columns. After 30 seconds, she said, "This isn't right." "No," Cap said. "It isn't. You've been over-ordering salt pork and under-ordering coffee and flour for—" She turned a page. "1.5 years. "Duly ordered," Cap said. "And I didn't check closely enough. Where did the excess salt pork go?" Cap didn't answer. She looked up at him. "Cap," she said, "where did it go?" "Did it?" He pulled out a chair and sat down with the heaviness of a man who has been carrying something for a long time and has finally found a place to put it down. "I think Dooley was selling surplus to the outfit over at Calhoun Creek," he said. "Small amounts, enough to pocket some cash without it being obvious." He paused. "I don't have proof." "Does Wesley know?" "Wesley doesn't look at the ledgers," Cap said quietly. "He hasn't since Martha died. She kept the books." Cora closed the ledger. She thought about the low supply cellar. She thought about 16 men coming home in a storm. She thought about what it meant that this ranch had been quietly bleeding from a wound nobody had been willing to look at for 1.5 years. "He needs to know," she said. "I know he does," Cap said. Cap." He stopped. "You came and showed me this ledger," she said. "Why?" He looked at his hands on the table, then at her. "Because you'll tell him straight," he said. "And because you're not afraid of what he'll feel when you do." She held his eyes for a moment. There was something in Cap Reeves under all that red cedar hardness that was actually just an old man who loved this ranch, and had been watching it suffer, and hadn't known how to say so. "All right," she said, "when he gets back from town." Wesley returned in the late afternoon with a wagon bed full of supplies, and a look on his face that said the trip had cost him something, not money, but the other kind of expense. The kind that comes from being out in the world after a long time of staying inside your own walls. She let him unload. Let him have the first cup of coffee when he came through the kitchen. Let him sit for 2 full minutes before she put the ledger in front of him. He looked at it. "Where did you get this?" "Cap brought it to me," she said. "Look at the salt pork columns, 18 months back." He looked. His face didn't change, not outwardly. But she saw the stillness in him shift, the kind of stillness that goes from resting to coiled. "Duly," he said. Not a question. "Cap suspects it. No proof." "How much?" She did the calculation in her head. She'd done it twice already. "Enough to matter. Not enough to break you. But your cellar shortage didn't come from bad luck, Mr. Hale. It came from someone treating your ranch like a personal account." He closed the ledger slowly. She waited for the anger. She'd seen men respond to this kind of news with table slamming, with cursing, with the particular explosion that comes when a man realizes he's been made a fool of. Wesley Hale just sat there. Then he said, "Martha would have caught it in a week." He said it quietly. Not with self-pity. With something worse than self-pity, with simple, direct acknowledgement of a truth he'd been avoiding for a long time. Cora sat down across from him. "Probably," she said. "But she's not here. And you can't keep the books yourself and run a ranch. You need someone watching the numbers." "I know that. I can do it," she said. "If you want. I kept the books at the Drover's Rest for 2 years. He looked at her then. Really looked the way he had in the yard on her first day, only this time without the coldness. With something more complicated. Something that looked from certain angles like the first hairline crack in a wall that has been holding back pressure for a very long time. "You cook," he said. "You fix stovepipes. You manage supply lists. And you keep books." "I survive," she said. "That's all it is." He was quiet. 1 week, she'd said in the beginning, and he'd said 1 week. That week was almost up. "Mrs. Morgan," he said. "Mr. Hale." "You're staying," he said. "Pass the week." She didn't let the relief show. She just nodded. "Good," she said. "Because I need 2 more pounds of cinnamon and a better arrangement for the flour barrels, and it would be wasteful to start over with someone new." He almost laughed. She heard the shape of it, the breath that almost became something warmer. "I'll move the flour barrels myself," he said. "Tonight," she said. "Before morning. I need the workflow changed before the storm hits." "Tonight?" he agreed. Boone found her at the woodpile after supper taking stock of what had been brought in versus what would be needed. "He told Cap you're staying," Boone said. "I know." "Cap's relieved. He won't say so." "I know that too." Boone leaned against the post. "You told him about the ledger." "I did." "How'd he take it?" "Better than I expected," she said honestly. "He didn't argue, didn't make excuses." "No," Boone said. "Wesley doesn't make excuses. It's one of his better qualities." A pause. "What did he say about Martha?" She looked at him. "You heard that? Sound carries in this kitchen. He didn't apologize for it." She turned back to the woodpile. "He said she would have caught it in a week." "She would have," Boone said. "She caught everything. She was—" He stopped, started again. "She was something else, Martha Hale. The kind of woman that a man builds his whole understanding of what's possible around. And when she was gone—" "The walls came down," Cora said. "The walls came down," he agreed. They stood there for a moment in the particular silence of 2 people who understand the same grief from different angles. "I'm not trying to replace her," Cora said. "I want that to be clear." "Nobody thinks that," Boone said. "Cap might." "Cap thinks you're the most competent person who's walked onto this ranch in 2 years," Boone said. "That's a different thing." She picked up 2 pieces of wood and turned toward the kitchen. "The storm," she said. "How bad, really?" Boone was quiet for a beat too long. "Boone," she said. "Bad," he said. "The kind of cold that gets into the bones. The kind that makes men do stupid things on the trail trying to get home faster instead of smarter." He paused. "If all 16 come in at once—" "I'll be ready," she said. "You keep saying that." "Because it keeps being true," she said, and went inside. That night she made Lily sit at the kitchen table while she worked, and she talked while she cooked, not about the storm, not about the ranch. About small things. About a town she and Lily had passed through on the train where every house had a red door. About the time in Abilene when a steer had walked into the restaurant and eaten half a pie before anyone noticed. About Lily's father, a little, just enough. Lily listened with her chin in her hands. "Mama," she said eventually. "I like it here." Cora's hand slowed for just a moment, then resumed. "I know you do, baby." "The dog likes me," Lily said. "Boone's dog. He waits for me by the fence post every morning." "I've seen that." "And Hatch showed me where the barn cats sleep." "Did he?" "He's not mean," Lily said. "He just pretends." "Most people," Cora said, "are not as mean as they pretend to be. Remember that." Lily considered this. "What about Cap?" "Cap," Cora said, "is not mean at all. He's just frightened." "Of what?" "Of things not working out," she said. "He loves this place. He doesn't know how to say it, so it comes out sideways. Like when you're about to cry but you sound angry instead." Cora looked at her daughter. "Exactly like that," she said. She was still at the stove at midnight when she heard footsteps in the yard, a single set unhurried. She knew by then whose footsteps were whose. This was Wesley's deliberate, even-weighted the walk of a man who moves through the world as though he's measured every inch of it. He appeared in the kitchen doorway. He looked at the preparations laid out across every surface, the flour measured, and covered the beans, soaking the dried fruit, set aside the fat rendered, and waiting the kindling stacked in exact order of size for the fastest possible fire tomorrow. He looked at it for a long time. "You should sleep," he said. "I'll sleep when the storm passes," she said. "That could be 3 days. I've gone 3 days before." He stayed in the doorway. She had the sense he hadn't meant to come to the kitchen, that he'd been somewhere else, and ended up here the way people end up places when their feet know better than their minds. "My father ran an outfit," he said, not quite out of nowhere. There was a thread connecting it to something, though she couldn't find the beginning. 40 men at peak. He had a cook named Mrs. Yardley. She was older, heavy-moved, like she was conserving herself for something. But she could feed 40 men in 40 minutes, and never once looked panicked doing it. "Good cook," Cora said. "He said she was the reason the outfit survived 2 bad winters," Wesley said. He used to say the cook is who holds the line when everything else goes wrong." She looked at him. "Your father was right," she said. "He usually was," Wesley said. Something moved behind his eyes, something old and complicated and not fully healed. "I should have taken better care of this kitchen. After Martha. I let it—" "You were grieving," she said. "That's not an excuse." "No?" she said. "But it's a reason. There's a difference." He looked at her sharply, like she'd said something that surprised him, not because it was new, but because someone had said it out loud. "Go to sleep, Mr. Hale," she said. Not unkindly. "I have everything under control here. That's what you hired me for." He stayed 1 more second. "Good night, Mrs. Morgan," he said. "Good night." She listened to his footsteps cross the yard. She listened until they were gone. Then she turned back to the stove, added a log to the fire, and kept working. Outside, the wind was no longer changing direction. It had decided. It was coming from the north now, and it was coming hard, and somewhere out on the open trail, 16 men were riding toward Roan Fork, with their collars up and their heads down, and they were counting on something warm waiting for them at the end. She wasn't going to let them down. She measured the flour again, just to be certain. Then she started on the biscuit plan. How many batches? How to stagger the oven times, so nothing sat cold. How to keep the stew at exactly the right temperature for men coming in at different hours. How to make the coffee last the full day without running short. In the corner room, Lily slept, and the dog Boone owned sat just outside the kitchen door in the cold, not asked, not directed, just there. Guarding. As if it knew the way animals sometimes do that something was coming, and that the woman inside the kitchen was the reason it would be all right. The cold hit before dawn. Not gradually, the way cold usually announces itself, creeping in under the door, settling first in the corners of the room. This came fast and flat and decisive, the way a judgment comes. Cora felt it the moment she stepped out to the woodpile at 4 in the morning, and the air hit her face like a wet iron. She didn't go back inside for her coat. She grabbed the wood, stacked it against her chest, and went straight back to the kitchen. She had too much to do to be cold. The fire was already going. She'd been feeding it since 2 a.m., and the first batch of biscuit dough was resting under a cloth on the far end of the table. The beans had been soaking since midnight. The dried beef was already cut and browning in the bottom of the big pot, and the smell of it, fat and salt and heat, had begun to fill the space with the particular warmth that only comes from a kitchen that is genuinely working. She counted her baking pans. 8. Not enough. She stood there for the moment calculating. Then she went to find Boone. He was already up. He was always already up. She'd learned that about him in the first week. Boone Carter woke with the ranch the way a doctor wakes when a patient is in the next room. Some part of him never fully slept. He was sitting on the bunkhouse step with his coffee when she came around the corner, and he looked up at her with the expression of a man who had been waiting for this conversation. I need more pans, she said. Big ones. What does this ranch have that I don't know about? Tool shed, he said immediately. Back left corner. There are 2 Dutch ovens that haven't been used since... He paused. Since Martha did the fall branding meal, 3 years ago. Get them for me. He was already standing. What else? Trestle tables, she said, for serving. If all 16 come in at once, I can't run individual plates. I need to set up a line. There are 2 in the barn. Can they be moved? With 4 men, yes. Find 4 men, she said, quietly. Don't wake the whole yard. They need to sleep as long as they can. But I need those tables set up in the main room before 8. Boone nodded. He wasn't writing anything down. He didn't need to. How many do you think will come in today? She said. Could be all of them, he said. Trail foreman sent a rider last night. Storm's coming faster than they thought. They'll push hard to make it in before dark. Before dark, she said. That means noon maybe. 2 o'clock at the latest. She looked at him. He looked back at her. All right, she said. All right, he repeated. She went back to the kitchen. He went to find the Dutch ovens. Cap Reeves appeared at 6:30 with the look on his face of a man who has just done a count and doesn't like the number. 18, he said. The Ortega brothers came up with the herd, and McCarthy's nephew the boy's first full trail. He's maybe 17. 18, she said. She was elbow deep in biscuit dough. Fine. Fine. Fine, she said again. Is the boy allergic to anything? Cap stared at her. I don't know. Find out, she said. And tell him when he comes in there's a seat closest to the stove. First-timers on a cold trail, they can't warm up fast enough on their own. The body doesn't know how yet. Cap stood there for a moment longer than necessary. What? She said. Nothing, he said. I'll find out about the allergy. He turned to go. Cap, she said. He stopped. How many biscuits can a cold cowboy eat in one sitting? He thought about it seriously, which she appreciated. 4, maybe 5 if they're good. So 6, she said. Go. She didn't hear Wesley come in. She had stopped hearing individual sounds an hour ago. Her mind had narrowed to the specific frequency of kitchen work, where everything that mattered was temperature and timing, and the particular color of something browning in a pan. He was simply suddenly there in the kitchen doorway, dressed for the cold, watching her. You've been up all night, he said. Good morning to you too, she said. He came into the kitchen. He looked at the preparations, the way he'd looked at them the night before, but differently now. Last night, it had been with the slow surprise of a man who had underestimated something. This morning, it was with the focused attention of a man recalculating. Boone says 18, he said. 18, she confirmed. The Dutch ovens, already on the fire. The trestle tables, being moved from the barn. He stopped trying to anticipate. Is there anything you need from me? He said, and she heard it, the shift in the question. Not is there anything the ranch needs, or what should I tell the men? He was asking what she needed. Directly. Without the deflection he'd been using all week as a kind of emotional buffer between himself and the fact that he had come to rely on her. She looked at him across the kitchen. Yes, she said. I need you to keep the men out of here until I call them. Every time someone comes in to check, I lose 3 minutes explaining things I've already thought through. Done, he said. What else? The apple cellar, she said. There are 6 bushels still in there from fall. I know because I found them last week, and I've been saving them. He hadn't known about the apples. She watched him realize that. 6 bushels, he said. I want to make cobblers, she said. 3 large ones. Men coming off a cold trail sweet is what they want after savory. It's not luxury, it's physiology. The sugar warms the blood faster. He nodded slowly. I'll bring the apples in. Now, she said. Not later. He went. Lily woke at 7 and came into the kitchen with her hair loose and her eyes still carrying the soft blur of sleep. She stopped when she saw the state of things, every surface occupied, every pot active, the rhythm of the kitchen running at a register she'd never seen it reach before. "Mama," she said, "is something happening?" "Yes," Cora said. "The Cowboys are coming home in a storm and I'm going to feed them. Are you going to help me or watch?" Lily tied her hair back with a piece of ribbon she'd learned this from watching her mother and walked to the table. "Tell me what to do," she said. Cora looked at her daughter. 5 years old, and already carrying herself like someone who understood that the best thing you could do in a crisis was to stop asking questions and start being useful. "The apples," she said. "When Mr. Hale brings them in, you peel them. I'll show you how deep to cut." "I know how to peel apples," Lily said, slightly affronted. "Show me," Cora said, because she needed to see, and because the act of showing her would make Lily feel trusted, which would make her work better, which mattered today. Lily peeled an apple in clean, efficient strips, barely wasting any flesh. "Good," Cora said. "Do all of them exactly like that." Hatch came at 7:40 with news that one of the trestle tables had a broken crosspiece and couldn't hold weight safely. Cora didn't even turn from the stove. "Tell Russ to fix it," she said. "Russ doesn't do carpentry." "Russ does whatever needs doing when there are 18 men coming home hungry," she said. "Tell him I said so." Hatch went. He came back 12 minutes later to report that Russ had in fact fixed the table crosspiece and had also apparently reinforced 2 of the legs while he was at it. "Good," Cora said. "He seemed almost happy about it." Hatch said, puzzled. "People like being given something real to do," she said. "It's the waiting around and feeling useless that makes men ornery. Remember that." Hatch stayed in the doorway a moment. "Can I do something?" She looked at him. His ears were red again, not from cold this time. "The coffee," she said. "You're in charge of coffee. I need that pot never empty from the moment the first man walks in until the last one has had 3 cups. You watch it like your life depends on it. Can you do that?" "Yes, ma'am." "The moment it drops below half, you refill it. Don't wait for empty. Empty is too late." "Yes, ma'am." "And Hatch." "Ma'am. If anyone tries to take over the coffee pot, you tell them Mrs. Morgan said no." He stood up straighter. "Yes, ma'am." He had a job now. She watched the change move through him like a key in a lock. At 9:15, Wesley came back from the apple cellar and stood in the kitchen watching Lily peel apples with the focused precision of a surgeon. He watched for a long moment without speaking. Lily looked up. She had her mother's way of looking at people, direct, unafraid assessing. "You're Mr. Hale," she said. "I am," he said. "I'm peeling apples," she said. "For the cobblers. Mama says sweet warms the blood faster." "Your mother is right," he said. Lily looked at him a moment longer. "Your dog is very old," she said. "Boone's dog. She limps in the cold." "She does," he said. He seemed slightly caught off guard by the conversational pivot, or maybe by the gravity with which Lily delivered it, like she was raising an item of serious concern. "She still comes out, though," Lily said. "Every morning, even when it hurts." Wesley said nothing for a moment. "She's loyal," he said finally. "Mama says that's what matters most," Lily said. "Showing up even when it's hard." She went back to her apple. "You can help if you want. There are a lot of apples." Wesley Hale looked at the pile of apples. He looked at this 5-year-old girl who had just, without apparent effort or strategy, said the most direct thing anyone had said to him in 2 years. He pulled out a chair. He picked up an apple. "Show me how deep to cut," he said. Lily looked at him with patient authority. "I'll show you, but don't waste the flesh." "I won't," he said. Cora had her back to both of them. She was stirring the big pot, and she did not turn around. But she felt it, the particular shift in a room's atmosphere when something quietly, permanently changes. She kept stirring. At 10:30, Boone came into the kitchen and leaned close enough to speak under the noise of the fire and the pots and Lily humming to herself in the corner. "Ryder came in," he said quietly. "Trail crew is about 4 hours out, but there's a problem." Cora looked at him. "Two of the men," he said. "Estes and the younger Ortega. They went ahead of the group last night, trying to make time. In the dark." "In the dark," she said. "In that cold." "Wesley's sending Cap and 2 men out to find them," Boone said. He stopped. "He's not saying it out loud, but he's worried." "Are they good men?" she said. "Estes and Ortega. Experienced." "Estes is 40 years on the trail," Boone said. "But 40 years takes a toll. And the younger Ortega?" He shook his head. "He's tough, but it was a bad night." Cora turned back to the stove, added more wood. "Tell Wesley," she said, "that I'm making broth, separate from the stew. Plain hot salty broth. If those men come in with exposure, they can't eat heavy food first. Their bodies won't take it." Boone looked at her. "You've seen trail exposure before." "My husband," she said quietly. "And I've cooked for enough outfits to know what comes off a bad storm." She didn't elaborate. "Tell him about the broth." Boone went. Wesley appeared in the kitchen doorway 4 minutes later. "Boone told me," he said. "It's already on," she said. She nodded at the small pot she'd set apart from the rest. Simple beef broth, nothing in it but salt and a little pepper and heat. "If Estes or the boy come in wrong, don't let them near the stew yet. Start with that." He looked at the small pot. "How do you know about exposure?" "Because I've seen what happens when you feed a half-frozen man a full meal too fast," she said. "His body's been shutting down to protect his core. You dump food into that and the gut seizes up. Broth first, 30 minutes, then solid food." Wesley was quiet. "Who taught you that?" he said. "Nobody," she said. "I learned it the hard way." He didn't ask what that meant. He just nodded. "Cap's riding out now," he said. "Good," she said. "Tell him if he finds them and they're bad off, don't try to rush them. Slow and warm is better than fast and wrong." He nodded again. He was listening to her the way a man listens when he's recognized that the other person knows something he doesn't and has decided to let go of the part of himself that resists that. It was a particular kind of listening, active willing without performance. She'd never had it from a man this quickly before. She pushed the thought aside. "Go," she said. "And when Cap finds them, come tell me first." The ranch held its breath for the next 2 hours. She felt it, the particular tension of a place waiting for news. The hands moved differently, quieter. Even Denny, who was constitutionally incapable of being quiet for longer than 4 minutes, had gone still somewhere in the yard and stayed there. She cooked through it. That was what she knew how to do. When the world outside the kitchen went uncertain and dangerous, the kitchen was the one place where every variable was under her control. The temperature of the fire, the thickness of the dough. The exact moment a stew shifted from almost ready to ready, that narrow window she could feel in her hands and smell before she could see it. She made biscuits, 63 of them in staggered batches, so the last ones coming out of the oven would be as hot as the first. She made the beef stew, 3 pots each, big enough to feed 6 hungry men. She made the broth small and separate, sitting slightly off the heat waiting. She made the cobblers with Lily's peeled apples, brown sugar, and a pinch of nutmeg and biscuit dough pressed over the top, and she put them in the second Dutch oven to bake slow. And she waited. Bata. At 12:43, she heard the horses. Not the main crew. The sound was too small, too urgent. 3 horses moving fast, coming in from the north. Cap's voice sharp in the yard. "Get Wesley, now." She was already filling the broth ladle. The kitchen door opened and Boone came in ahead of everyone else. His face set in the particular expression of a man delivering mixed news. Not the worst, but not clean either. "Estes is bad," he said. "Ortega's okay cold, and shook up, but okay. Estes's hands—" "Get him in here," she said. "Right now. Not the bunkhouse. In here closest to the fire. Cora. Boone. Her voice was flat and certain. In here. Now. He went. They brought Estes in, 2 men half carrying him, his face the color of old candle wax, his hands wrapped in someone's spare shirt. He was conscious, which was something. He was shaking hard, which was not alarming. Yet shaking meant the body was still fighting. "Sit him here," she said. She had the chair already pulled close to the stove the way she'd told Cap to do for the young first-timer. She hadn't known then she'd be using it for this. She pushed the broth into his hands before his body had fully registered he was sitting. "Drink," she said. "Slow. Don't rush it." I'm fine," Estes said. His teeth were chattering on every word. "You're not fine," she said. "Drink." Wesley was in the doorway. She looked at him over Estes's head, a quick, direct look that said, "Stay back. Let me work." He stayed back. Estes drank. The shaking slowed after 5 minutes, not gone but downgraded from violent to manageable. His color began to come back. She watched his hands, the real concern, and when he finally unwrapped the cloth, she saw the white patches on 2 of his fingers and made the internal assessment quickly and without drama. "You'll keep the fingers," she said. "But you're done on the trail for a while." "How do you—" "I know what I'm looking at," she said. "Drink the rest of the broth. Then you're going to eat something small. And you're going to sleep in here tonight, not the bunkhouse." "Ma'am, I don't need—" "Estes," Wesley said from the doorway. His voice was quiet. "Do what she says." Estes looked at Wesley, then back at Cora. Something in the old cowboy's face shifted the particular surrender of a proud man who has been frightened enough by his own body that he's willing to be taken care of. "Yes, ma'am," he said. The main crew arrived at 2:15. She heard them long before she saw them. The sound of 16 horses coming in together has a weight to it, a particular rhythm like slow thunder that doesn't stop. The yard erupted with voices, with the sounds of horses being relieved of their loads, with the short, sharp language of cold and tired men who have made it to the place they were trying to get to, and are only now allowing themselves to feel how much the getting there cost. She was ready. She had been ready since midnight. She called Hatch in from the doorway. "Coffee, now." He moved. She called to Boone. "Tables are set. Get them in groups. Don't let them all pile in at once, or nobody gets served right." Boone moved. She called to Lily, who had spent the last 20 minutes in the corner, organizing the plates in exactly the order Cora had showed her. "You ready?" "Ready," Lily said. "Good girl." She picked up the ladle and stood at the stove and waited. The first group came through the door in a wave of cold air, and the smell of horse and wet wool, and the particular exhaustion of men who have been outside in the kind of cold that makes even the air feel hostile. They were pulling off gloves and hats, rubbing hands together, not speaking, yet too tired to perform, too cold to be polite about anything. Then the warmth hit them. Then the smell hit them. She watched it move through the group the way a wave moves through water, starting at the front, rippling back. The man in front stopped walking. The man behind him stumbled into his back, and then stopped too. Someone in the middle said something low and wordless that wasn't quite a word but communicated everything. She didn't wait for them to collect themselves. "Sit down," she said. "Coffee's on the table. Food's coming." They sat. She served them herself, not because she had to, not because there wasn't help available, but because she understood something about this particular moment that couldn't be delegated. When a man has been on the trail in the cold for 3 days, and he sits down and someone puts a bowl of hot food in front of him, the person who puts it there matters. It's not logic. It's not sentiment. It's just true, the way a lot of true things are true, without explanation, without argument. Biscuits first, then the stew. Then the coffee refilled before it even got cold, because Hatch was doing exactly what she'd told him and watching like his life depended on it. The room got quiet. Not the quiet of people who have nothing to say. the quiet of people who have stopped needing to say anything because everything they needed had just been handed to them. One of the Ortega brothers, the older one, she'd learned his name was Carlito, held up his biscuit and looked at it for a moment before he ate it the way a man holds something up when he wants to acknowledge that it is a real thing and not a dream. "Señora," he said, This is good. This is very good." "Eat," she said. He ate. Wesley found her at the kitchen door. 30 minutes later, she'd stepped out for the first time in hours just to breathe air that wasn't full of steam and wood smoke. Her hands were still for once. Her shoulders were somewhere near her ears. She made herself lower them deliberately. He stood beside her, not close enough to be intrusive, just near. "Estes is sleeping," he said. "Color's good." "Good," she said. "McCarthy's nephew ate 4 bowls," he said. "I expected 5. He was quiet. Then he said, "Mrs. Morgan." "Mr. Hale, I need to ask you something." She looked at him. His face in the cold had a different quality than it did indoors, something more exposed the way faces are when there's nothing between them and the weather. "The men," he said, "all of them, 18 of them, they're—" He stopped, started again. "They came in off that trail expecting nothing. They've been expecting nothing for a long time. Dooley was adequate. What you—" He stopped again. She waited. "Can you cook for a whole outfit?" he said. "Not just tonight. Every day. Through winter, through roundup, through whatever comes. Can you do this?" She heard the full weight of it. Not just the question about cooking. The question beneath it. Can you stay? Can you hold? Can you be the thing? This place has been missing. Can I trust you with something I haven't trusted anyone with in 2 years? She looked at him steadily. "Tell me how many," she said. "I'll be ready." He held her gaze. The cold moved between them, and neither of them stepped back from it. 18, he said, "give or take." "Then I'll cook for 20, she said, "in case." He nodded. Something in his face, that wall she'd been watching all week, that careful construction of distance and control, had developed a fracture. Not broken, not gone, but changed. The way stone changes when water has been working at it long enough. Quietly, permanently. She turned back toward the kitchen. "The cobblers should be ready," she said. "Go tell the men." He went, and she picked up her ladle and walked back to the stove, and behind her the yard was cold, and the storm was fully here now, pressing against every wall of Roan Fork Ranch, and inside 18 men were warm and fed and quiet, in the particular way of people who have been reminded without a word being said about it, that someone thought they were worth taking care of. She added a log to the fire. She kept working. The cobblers came out perfect. She knew, before she opened the Dutch oven, she could tell by the smell, the way the sweetness shifted from raw sugar to something caramelized and deep with the biscuit crust gone from pale to gold. She lifted the lid and the steam rose, and even Hatch, who had been focused entirely on the coffee pot with the intensity of a man guarding a military position, turned his head. "Is that—" "Yes," she said. "Keep watching the coffee." He turned back, but she saw his jaw work in anticipation. She set the cobblers on the cooling rack and straightened up, and for just a moment, 3 seconds, maybe 4, she stood still. Her hands ached. Her lower back had been sending complaints for the last 2 hours that she had been systematically ignoring. Her eyes were dry from the heat of the fire and from the specific fatigue that comes from concentrating without rest for 14 hours straight. She allowed herself 3 seconds. Then she picked up the serving spoon and went to find Boone.
"Shachech."
"Tell them there's cobbler," she said. Boone looked at her. "Mrs. Morgan, those men are already— I don't know what the word is. Converted, maybe." "Converted," she said. "That's a strong word for men eating supper." "You didn't see their faces when the stew came out," he said. "I was busy making the stew," she said. "Cobbler. Tell them." He went. She heard it, the sound from the main room. A general low noise that rose in register when he announced it. Not shouting. Not the wild enthusiasm of men at a saloon. Something quieter and more genuine than that. The sound of people who have already received more than they expected and are now being told there is more. She served the cobbler herself, moving around the tables with the spoon and the Dutch oven, and the room was different now than it had been an hour ago. The men had settled into themselves. The cold was out of them. She could see it in how they were sitting. The shoulders dropped, the hands loose around the coffee cups instead of gripped. McCarthy's nephew, the 17-year-old, had fallen asleep sitting upright against the wall, and no one had moved him or laughed. Carlito Ortega had set his hat on the table in front of him and was looking at it with an expression that had nothing to do with the hat and everything to do with the fact that he was alive and warm and inside. She spooned cobbler in front of Cap Reeves last. He looked at it, then at her. "Sit down," he said. "I have." "Mrs. Morgan," he said. "Sit down." She sat. She couldn't remember the last time someone had told her to do that in a kitchen, and meant it as kindness rather than dismissal. Cap picked up his spoon, ate one bite of the cobbler. He chewed slowly, deliberately, the way a man eats when he doesn't want to rush past the experience of it. Then he put the spoon down. He said, "My mother made apple cobbler." "A lot of mothers did," she said. She didn't realize until she'd said it that she'd said the same thing to Russ about the molasses oats 4 days ago. It was true both times. "She died when I was 11, Cap said. "I haven't tasted cobbler since then that reminded me of hers." He paused. "This does." She said nothing. There wasn't anything to say that wouldn't diminish it. Cap picked the spoon back up and kept eating, and his face had gone somewhere private that she didn't follow him into. Wesley ate standing in the kitchen doorway. She noticed because he'd never done that before. He always took his plate to the separate table, the solitary one, the one that had probably been his since Martha died. Tonight, he stood in the doorway between the main room and the kitchen with his plate and his coffee, and he ate where he could see both rooms at once. She was cleaning the big pots when she noticed it. "There's a chair," she said. "I know," he said. "And a table. I know that too." She kept cleaning. He kept standing. "The stew," he said after a while. "What did you put in it?" "Beef, potatoes, onion, dried herbs from your cellar that have been there long enough that I wasn't sure they'd still have any life in them," she said. "They did. There was something else." "Worcestershire," she said. "Half a bottle. I found it behind the molasses. We have Worcestershire sauce," he said with the expression of a man discovering a room in his own house he didn't know existed. "You did," she said. "I used most of it." He ate another bite. "My father's cook, Mrs. Yardley. She used to say the secret to any good stew was something the cowboys couldn't identify," he said. "Something that made them feel like the food was better than they could explain." "She was right," Cora said. "Give a man a meal he can completely explain, and he eats it. Give him something with one thing he can't quite name, and he remembers it." He looked at her. "Where did you learn that?" "Same place I learned everything," she said. "Cooking for people who depended on it." He was quiet for a moment. Then Estes woke up. He asked for the stew. "How much?" He said a bowl. "Give him half," she said. "And bread. His gut's not fully back yet. I'll check on him in an hour." "You'll check on him," Wesley said. Not challenging, just noting it. "He's under my kitchen roof," she said. "That makes him my responsibility until he's walking right again." Wesley looked at her for a long moment. Something was working in him, she could see it. The internal machinery of a man who is revising something, turning it over, looking at it from a new angle. He said, "Cora." It was the first time he'd used her first name. She looked up from the pot. "Wesley," she said. He cleared his throat. "Boone told me about the offer." She set the pot down slowly. "What offer?" she said. But she already knew which offer. There had only been one. "Hale Creek outfit," he said. "Jim Hale's operation. No relation. Boone said their foreman came by while I was in town yesterday and spoke to you." She had not mentioned that to anyone. She looked at Boone's general direction through the wall and made a private note. He did, she said. He offered you a position. He offered me a position, she confirmed. More money than I'm paying you, Wesley said. Considerably, she said. The word landed between them, and she didn't soften it. It was true, and they both knew it, and pretending otherwise would have been an insult to both of them. Wesley put his plate down on the counter. He crossed his arms and looked at the floor for a moment, not in defeat, but in the posture of a man gathering himself to say something he hadn't planned on saying tonight. "Why didn't you go?" he said. "I haven't gone anywhere," she said. "Cora." "Wesley. Why didn't you take it?" She picked up the pot again and hung it on the hook and turned to face him properly. "Because Roan Fork needs me more," she said. "That's not a reason to stay somewhere," he said. "Need isn't enough. You could be needed anywhere." "You're right," she said. "Need isn't enough." She looked at him steadily. "But need combined with the sense that something real is being built here, that is enough. For me." He held her eyes. "Something real," he said. "This kitchen," she said. "This outfit. Those men in there who just ate the first decent meal they've had in a year and a half." She paused. "Lily's happy here, Mr. Hale, and Lily doesn't get happy easily. She's careful about it like her mother." He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, "I'll match the offer." "You can't afford to," she said. "I've seen the ledger." "I'll manage it." "You don't need to," she said. "I'm already staying." He looked at her the way he'd looked at the supply list the first day, with the expression of a man recalculating a number that keeps coming out different than he expects. "You're already staying," he said. "Yes." "Because something real is being built." "Yes." He uncrossed his arms. He picked his plate back up. He looked at it, then at the cobbler pan on the cooling rack. "Is there more cobbler?" he said. "There is," she said. "Then I'll have some," he said. "And I'll sit at the table like a normal person." She handed him the spoon. Hig. Denny came to the kitchen at 8 o'clock. She almost didn't recognize him at first, not because he'd changed, but because his face was arranged differently than she'd ever seen it. The noise was gone. The performance was gone. He stood in the kitchen doorway with his hat in his hands, and something in the vicinity of his chest that was clearly causing him some difficulty. "Mrs. Morgan," he said. "Denny." He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "That stew," he said. "Yes." "And the biscuits." "Yes." "And the—" He stopped, started again. "I said some things, earlier, in the first few days, about what you could cook and whether you knew what a cowboy outfit actually needed, and—" He stopped again. "I know what you said," she said. His ears went red, both of them. "I know you know." "The whole kitchen knew," she said. "Sound carries." He winced. "Yes, ma'am." She waited. "I was wrong," he said. "About all of it." He said it fast, like it was easier if he didn't slow down in the middle. "I was wrong, and I'm sorry, and that cobbler—" He stopped, swallowed. "That cobbler is the best thing I have ever eaten in my life, and I know that sounds like I'm saying it to make up for being an idiot, but I'm saying it because it's true, and those are two separate things." She looked at him for a moment. "Denny?" she said. "Ma'am?" "Go to bed." He blinked. "I forgive you," she said. "And yes, I'll make cobbler again. Now go to bed, you've got a full day tomorrow, and you need sleep more than you need to stand in my kitchen being sorry." He turned to go. "And Denny," she said. He stopped. "Next time you have an opinion about what someone can do before they've had a chance to do it," she said, "wait, just wait." He nodded. It was a genuine nod. The kind that means the information went in and found somewhere to land. "Yes, ma'am," he said, and left. Easties was awake and lucid when she checked on him at 9. He was sitting up on the cot she'd had moved near the stove, his hands wrapped properly. Now she'd found clean cloth and done it herself while he slept, and he had the particular clear-eyed look of a man who has come back from somewhere cold and is taking stock of how glad he is to be back. "Mrs. Morgan," he said. "How do you feel?" she said. "Like I made a stupid decision," he said. "Going out ahead of the group in the dark." "You did," she said. "But you're here." "Because of you," he said. "Because of Cap and the men who rode out," she said. "I just had the broth ready." "Don't do that," Estes said. "Do what?" "Minimize it," he said. "I've been on the trail 40 years, Mrs. Morgan. I know what that broth meant. I know what warm means when your body has decided to stop fighting." He looked at his wrapped hands. "I know what it means that someone had it ready before they even knew for certain they'd need it." She sat on the edge of the chair beside the cot. She was so tired that the chair felt like the most generous thing anyone had offered her all day. "That's just cooking," she said. "No," he said. "That's taking care of people. Cooking is a part of it. But it's not the whole thing." He paused. "How long have you been doing this?" "Since I was 10, she said. "Since my mother was sick." He nodded slowly. "You know what you are." She waited. "You're the kind of person an outfit remembers," he said. "Not the cook who made good food once. The one they tell stories about 20 years later. The one they measure every other cook against." He said it with the certainty of someone making an assessment based on 4 decades of evidence. "Wesley Hale doesn't know yet how lucky this ranch just got." "He's starting to figure it out," she said. Estes smiled. It was a slow, weathered smile. "I imagine he is." No. Lily was still awake when Cora finally came to the back room. She was lying in the narrow bed with the blanket pulled to her chin, not quite asleep in that in-between state where a child is too tired to get up and too wound up to go under. She turned her head when Cora came in. "Mama, you should be asleep." "I know." Lily was quiet for a moment. "Russ said thank you to me today." "Did he?" "He said—" She stopped. "He said the bread reminded him of something. He didn't say what, but he looked sad, and then he looked better. Is that normal?" "Very," Cora said. "Food does that." "Why?" She sat on the edge of the bed. "Because taste and smell go somewhere in the brain that language doesn't reach," she said. "You can explain something to a person all day, and they might understand it up here." She touched Lily's forehead. "But a smell, a taste, it goes somewhere deeper. Somewhere that holds memory and feeling all mixed together." Lily considered this. "So when they eat your food, they're not just tasting the food. They're tasting everything it reminds them of," Cora said. "Their mothers, their homes, the good times before the hard times." "That's a big responsibility," Lily said. Cora looked at her daughter. "You're 5 years old," she said. "I know," Lily said. "Is it?" "Yes," Cora said quietly. "It is. It's a very big responsibility, and I don't take it lightly." Lily was quiet for a moment. "Mr. Hale sat with the men tonight." "I know. He didn't used to, did he? Boone said he always ate alone." "He did," Cora said. "Why did he sit with them tonight?" Cora smoothed the blanket over her daughter's shoulders. She thought about Wesley standing in the doorway eating his supper, about him saying her first name, about the fractured quality in the wall he kept between himself and everything that could hurt him. Because, she said, sometimes the right meal in the right room reminds a person that being alone was a choice they were making, not something that was happening to them. Lily thought about this for a long time. Long enough that Cora thought she'd finally gone to sleep. Then, "Was that your recipe?" Cora paused. "Which one?" "Making him sit with people." She looked at her daughter's face. The watchful brown eyes, the absolute seriousness of a child who asks questions she actually wants the answer to. "Go to sleep, Lily," she said. Lily smiled. It was a small, private smile. "Good night, Mama." The knock on the kitchen door came at 10:15. She almost didn't hear it. She'd been banking the fire for the night, adding one last log, making sure the temperature would hold through the cold hours without burning too hot. But she heard it. Quiet. Deliberate. She opened the door. Carlito Ortega stood on the step with his hat in both hands. Behind him, the storm was in full throat. Now she could hear it in the way the cold moved, the way sound behaved differently when the wind was serious. "Señora," he said. "Forgive me. I know it's late." "Come in," she said. No, I don't want to. He stopped. He was a man of maybe 45 broad through the shoulders, with the hands of someone who had worked outdoors his entire life. He looked at his hat. "My brother, Miguel, the young one." "He's all right," she said. "I checked on him." "I know," Carlito said. He told me you." He stopped again, and she could see him working through the English, not because he didn't know the words, but because the words he wanted required care. "He was scared," Carlito said. "Out there, very scared. And he wouldn't say so to the other men, but he told me. And he said when he came in, and the warmth hit him, and the smell, he said that was the moment he stopped being scared." She said nothing. She let him finish. "I wanted to say thank you," Carlito said. "For that, for the moment." She held his eyes. "Your brother has good instincts," she said. "Keep him on the trail long enough, and those instincts will keep him alive." "They kept him alive tonight," Carlito said. "Yes," she said. "They did." He put his hat on, turned to go, stopped. "The cobbler," he said. "With the apples." "Yes. In Sonora, where we are from, my mother made something like this. Not the same. Similar." He paused. "You didn't know that?" "No," she said. "But you made it anyway," he said. "And it tasted like home." He walked back into the storm. She closed the door and stood with her back to it for a moment. Then she went to check the fire one last time. It was Cap who came last. It was almost 11. She was ready to sleep. Her body had stopped asking and started demanding. She was sitting at the kitchen table with her hands flat on the wood and her eyes very close to closing when she heard his boots on the step. He didn't knock. He just opened the door and stood there. "Cap," she said. "What is it?" He came in. He sat across from her without asking. He put both hands on the table and looked at them. "I owe you an apology," he said. "You've treated me fairly," she said. "I was skeptical," he said, "from the first moment, and I made that clear in ways that were—" He stopped. "I was wrong." "You were doing your job," she said. "You were protecting the ranch." "I was protecting myself," he said, "from caring whether this worked out or not." He raised his eyes to hers. "Because I've watched this place fall apart for 2 years, and every time I let myself think it might get better, it didn't. So I stopped letting myself think it." She looked at him, this cedar-hard, plain-spoken man who had just told her the truest thing he probably knew how to say. "Cap," she said, "look at those men in there." He turned his head toward the sound of the main room, low voices. Now the comfortable murmur of men who have been fed and warmed and are winding down toward sleep. "I'm looking," he said. "That," she said, "happened tonight because everyone did their job. You got them safely back to the trail. Boone got the tables set. Hatch watched the coffee like his life depended on it." She paused. "And I cooked." "And you cooked," he said. "Nobody held this line alone," she said. "That's how a ranch works when it's working." He was quiet for a long moment. "Wesley's different," he finally said, "since you've been here." "He's the same man," she said. "He's just—" "Coming back," Cap said. "Coming back," she agreed. Cap stood. He pushed his chair in precisely with the care of a man who has been taught that the small things are how you show what you think of a place. "Get some sleep, Mrs. Morgan," he said. "Good night, Cap." He walked to the door, stopped with his hand on the frame. "The cobbler," he said with his back to her. "Yes." "Make it again," he said. "Soon." "I will," she said. He went. She sat alone in the kitchen for 5 minutes after that. The fire was banked. The pots were clean and hung. The table was cleared. The Dutch ovens were cooling. Hatch's coffee pot was finally empty the first time all day, and it sat on the corner of the stove like a soldier who had held his post. Outside, the storm was at its full height. She could hear it working against the walls, the particular sound of a serious winter pressing against the places where the world tries to keep itself warm. Inside, 18 men were full and warm and headed toward sleep. Estes's hands were wrapped and would heal clean. Miguel Ortega had stopped being afraid. Lily was asleep with her ribbon in her hair, and Wesley Hale had sat at the table with his men for the first time in 2 years and had eaten cobbler and had called her by her first name. She put her head down on her arms on the kitchen table. She didn't plan to sleep there, but her body had its own plans. And for the first time in a very long time, longer than she could accurately measure, she closed her eyes in a place that felt in some quiet and unannounced way like it might be hers. She woke up with her cheek on the kitchen table and a blanket around her shoulders that hadn't been there when she fell asleep. She sat up slowly. The fire was still going. Not the banked coals she'd left it with, but built back up to a proper working heat. The coffee pot was full and hot. A plate sat beside it with 2 biscuits from last night's batch covered with a cloth. She sat there for a moment, taking stock of these facts. Someone had come in while she slept, had seen her with her head on the table and had not woken her, had put a blanket on her shoulders and rebuilt the fire, and made coffee and covered biscuits for her breakfast, and left without a word. She knew whose boots she hadn't heard. She put her hands around the coffee cup and sat with that knowledge for exactly as long as it took to drink the first cup. Then she got up, folded the blanket, and started breakfast for 18 men. The storm broke by mid-morning. Not gently, storms in that part of Texas didn't do anything gently. 1 hour it was pressing against every wall and window of Roan Fork Ranch, with the full weight of the northern plains behind it. And the next hour the wind dropped. The sound changed, and the cold became the clean, flat cold of aftermath, rather than the aggressive cold of assault. The men felt it immediately. She heard the shift in the bunkhouse, the sound of people deciding to move again, to do things, to be useful. Cowboys were not built for stillness. 2 days of storm confinement had wound them tight. Cap had them organized and out within the hour. She heard him in the yard. North fence first, then the water troughs, then someone go check the Ortega cattle in the south pasture. And the sounds of the ranch finding its rhythm again, the purposeful noise of a working outfit that knew what it was doing. She was rolling dough for the midday meal when Wesley came to the kitchen. "The blanket," she said without turning around. He was quiet for a moment. "You were asleep," he said. "I noticed that," she said. "When I woke up. You'd been up for 20 hours. "I know how long I'd been up," she said. She set the rolling pin down and turned to face him. "Thank you." He stood with his hat in his hand. She'd learned this was what Wesley Hale did when he was in a conversation he hadn't fully prepared for. He held his hat and turned the brim slightly with his thumb. A tell so small that most people would never see it. She saw it. "I rebuilt the fire," he said. "And the coffee." "I know," she said. "I know it was you." He looked at her steadily. "How?" "Because the fire was built the way you build it," she said. "Too much wood on the left side. You've been doing it that way all week." He looked at the stove, back at her. "I build the fire wrong." "You build it your way," she said. "It works. It's just not how I do it." Something almost like a smile. "You have opinions about fire building." "I have opinions about everything," she said. "We've established this." He put his hat on, took it back off. And then he said, "The Hale Creek foreman came back this morning." The rolling pin went still under her hands. "While you were asleep," he said. "He came to the yard. I spoke to him." "What did he want?" "To make you a second offer," Wesley said. "A better one. He said his owner Jim Hale is willing to build a proper cook's quarters, private, with a room for Lily." She looked at him. His face was doing the work of staying even. "And," she said, "and I told him." Wesley said that Mrs. Morgan had already made her decision and that Roan Fork wasn't in the habit of going back on arrangements. You told him that, she said. I did. Without asking me. A pause. Yes. She held his eyes for a moment. Then she turned back to the doe. You were right, she said. I had already made my decision. She heard him exhale just slightly, the sound of a man releasing something he'd been holding since morning. All right, he said. But Wesley. Yes. Next time someone comes to this ranch with an offer that concerns me, she said, you come and wake me up, even if I'm asleep on the kitchen table. Understood, he said. I will. Good, she said. Now go do something useful. I'm trying to make bread. Boone found her at the well at noon. He had the look of a man who had information he wasn't sure how to position, which on Boone's face was a very specific expression somewhere between careful and apologetic. What? She said. Words out, he said. About yesterday. What word? About what you did, Boone said. Estes, the broth, the meal, all of it. He paused. Roan Fork isn't a quiet place. These men have brothers on other outfits, friends in town. By this morning, 3 different ranches knew that Wesley Hale's new cook fed 18 men off a 3-day storm preparation and brought a half-frozen trail hand back from the edge. She looked at him. By tonight, Boone said, everyone between here and Laredo is going to know your name. She turned back to the well crank. That's not... Mrs. Morgan, Boone said. Cora. He almost never used her first name. I'm not telling you this to flatter you. I'm telling you because there will be more offers. Better ones, maybe. And I want you to know before they come. She looked at him. Why are you telling me before they come? She said. Because. Boone said, Wesley Hale is not a man who knows how to ask for what he needs. He knows how to work. He knows how to grieve. But asking. He shook his head. He'll stand in the doorway of that kitchen every night for the next year, and never once say out loud what he actually wants. Boone, she said carefully. I'm 71 years old, he said. I have watched people talk around the truth my whole life, and I am tired of it. He looked at her directly. He needs you here, not just the ranch, him, and Lily needs this place. And those 18 men who took their hats off without being told last night need someone who gives a damn whether they're warm. She was quiet. I'm staying, she said. I know, he said. I just wanted to say it out loud, so someone had. He took the water bucket from her hands and carried it back to the kitchen without another word. The first real test came 4 days after the storm. A rider arrived from a ranch called the Broken Spur, 40 miles east, a bigger operation with a letter addressed to the cook at Roan Fork. She read it at the kitchen table, while Lily braided the dog's tail with a piece of straw, and the dog endured this with profound patience. The letter offered her 3 times her current wage, private quarters, a kitchen built to her specifications, an assistant of her choosing. She read it twice. Then she folded it and put it in the pocket of her apron and went back to the stove. Wesley was in the yard when she came out with the lunch pail for the men working the east fence. He saw her face and fell into step beside her without asking. Letter from the Broken Spur, she said. I heard the rider came. 3 times my wage, she said. He was quiet. A kitchen built to my specifications, she said. Still quiet. An assistant. Cora, I'm telling you, she said, because you told me to wake you up next time. Consider this waking you up. She walked 3 more steps. I'm not going, but I want you to know what's being offered so this ranch understands what it has. Wesley stopped walking. She kept going 2 more steps before she stopped too and turned around. He was looking at her with an expression she hadn't seen on him before, not the guarded assessment of the first day, not the grief-muffled distance of the first week. Something more open than either of those. Something that looked like a man standing in a doorway he's been afraid of for a long time, finally deciding whether to walk through it. What does this ranch have? He said. His voice was quiet, serious. She met his eyes. Someone who's not going anywhere, she said. He held her gaze for a long moment. The wind came through the yard, and neither of them moved. All right, he said. Then I'm going to stop pretending I don't know that. Good, she said. Start by fixing the flour barrel arrangement I asked about 2 weeks ago. He almost laughed, really almost close enough that she could see it in the corners of his eyes. Today, he said. This afternoon, she said. I need it done before the next supply order. She turned back toward the east fence. Cora, he said. She stopped, didn't turn around. Thank you, he said, for staying. She started walking again. Fix the flour barrels, she said. Then we'll talk about thank you. Okay. Estes left the kitchen cot on the 5th day after the storm. His hands were healing clean. She'd checked them every morning, rewrapped them every evening, told him exactly what she was seeing without drama or false comfort. The white patches had come back to pink. He'd have full use. He'd probably have a scar on the smallest finger of his left hand, but scars on hands were a language trail men spoke fluently, and he didn't seem troubled by it. He stood at the kitchen door on the morning he left wearing his coat and his hat, with his hands wrapped in clean cloth and tucked into his pockets. I owe you, he said. You owe me nothing, she said. That's not how I was raised, he said. Then pay it forward, she said. Next time you see someone who needs looking after, look after them. That's the currency I trade in. He nodded slowly. You know what I told Wesley last night? She raised her eyebrows. I told him, Estes said, that if he lets you walk out of this ranch for any reason, short of your own free will, I'll haunt him for the rest of his natural life. How did he take that? He said, Estes replied with a small, dry smile, that the thought had occurred to him independently. She held her expression for 3 seconds. Then she laughed. It was a real laugh, unguarded, genuine, the kind that starts in the chest and arrives on the face without asking permission. She couldn't remember the last time she'd laughed like that. Somewhere between Abilene and the boarding house. Somewhere in the long, hard middle of being a widow with a child, and no fixed ground. Estes smiled at the sound of it. Good, he said. Good, there it is. He put his hat on and walked out into the morning. The thing nobody told you about being valued, the real thing, not the surface version, was that it arrived quietly. It didn't come with a declaration or a ceremony. It came in the accumulation of small things that added up to something larger than any of them individually. It came in the way Hatch started asking her every morning what she needed before she had to ask. In the way Russ fixed things around the kitchen without being told a loose hinge, a warped drawer silently efficiently, as though maintaining the kitchen had simply become his responsibility. In the way Cap Reeves started including her in the foreman's morning discussions about the day's work, pulling a chair for her without comment, like it had always been done. It came in the way the men stopped saying the cook and started saying Cora. And then after a while stopped using any name at all, because she was simply present in the way the stove was present, the way the well was present. Not scenery, but infrastructure. The thing the day was built around. It came in the way Lily stopped being the widow's child and started being simply Lily, the one who knew where the barn cats slept, the one the old dog followed to the fence post every morning, the one Carlito Ortega was teaching 3 words of Spanish every afternoon, in exchange for her teaching him to braid straw, the way she'd learned from watching her mother tie aprons. And it came in the way Wesley Hale changed, not fast, not dramatically, not in the way of stories where a man is struck by something and becomes immediately different. In the way of real change, which is slow and sometimes invisible while it's happening, and only recognizable in retrospect when you look back and see that the man in front of you is not quite the same as the one who stood in the doorway 2 months ago and looked at her trunk and her daughter and said nothing for 3 seconds too long. He started eating with the men every night. He started talking during those meals, not performing, not managing, not playing the role of the owner, just talking about the cattle, about the weather, about a horse that had thrown a shoe, about nothing in particular in the way people talk when they have stopped conserving themselves. He started fixing things on the ranch he'd been letting go. Not all at once. He wasn't a man who did things all at once. One week, it was the north fence. The next, the water system to the east pasture. The week after, he finally dealt with the roof over the bunkhouse that had been leaking since October and driving Russ to a level of personal offense that bordered on philosophical. Boone watched all of it with the quiet satisfaction of a man who has waited a long time to see something come right. The letter from Dooley's former employer arrived on a Wednesday in late January. She found it on the kitchen table when she came in from the cellar. It had been brought in by the writer who did the weekly mail run, left where she could see it. Someone had set it there deliberately. She could tell by the placement. Dead center. She opened it. It wasn't from Dooley. It was from a man named Calloway who ran the outfit over at Calhoun Creek, the one Cap had suspected of buying stolen surplus from Dooley 18 months ago. The letter was not an apology. It was an inquiry. He was asking with the elaborate politeness of a man who knows he's on thin ground, whether Rowan Fork was still experiencing supply shortages and whether there might be any interest in a long-term purchasing arrangement, for he listed several items. Salt pork, dried beans, coffee, the exact items that had been going missing from Wesley's ledger. She read the letter twice. Then she went to find Cap. She found him at the water trough with two of the hands directing the repair of a cracked seam. "Cap," she said, "walk with me." He looked at her face and handed his tools to the nearest man without a word. They walked to the far side of the yard before she handed him the letter. He read it. She watched his face go through 3 different expressions before it settled on something hard and certain. "He doesn't know we have the ledger," Cap said. "No," she said. "He thinks whatever Dooley told him holds, that no one here checked the numbers." "Because no one did," Cap said. "Until you." "Wesley needs to see this," she said. "Yes," Cap said. "He does." "And after he sees it," she said, "he needs to decide what to do." "But Cap, this isn't just about Dooley anymore. Calloway wrote this letter. That means he was a willing buyer. He knew those goods were being skimmed." "You can't prove that from a letter," Cap said. "No," she said. "But you can prove it from the ledger, and from the pattern of dates, and from the quantities." She paused. "I've already cross-referenced them. I've been doing it for 3 weeks." Cap stared at her. "You've been building a case," he said slowly. "I've been keeping books," she said. "Which is what I told Wesley I'd do." She held the letter out. "Take it to him, now, before the afternoon work starts." Cap took the letter. He was halfway across the yard when he stopped and turned back. "Cora," he said. "Yes." "How long did it take you to figure this out?" "The full picture," she said. "About a week after I opened the ledger." "You've known for 3 weeks, and you didn't say anything." "I wanted the numbers complete before I said anything," she said. "Accusations without evidence aren't useful. Evidence without accusation is." Cap looked at her for a long moment. "Martha used to say something like that," he said quietly. She said nothing. "She used to say, 'Don't fire the gun until you know what you're shooting at,'" Cap said. "It wasn't about guns. It was about everything." "Smart woman," Cora said. "The smartest one," Cap said. And went to find Wesley. Wesley called her into the front room an hour later. It was the first time she'd been in that room. The room that was his, the one the rest of the ranch orbited around, but didn't enter uninvited. He was sitting at the desk with the ledger open in front of him, and the Calloway letter beside it, and the particular quality of stillness that meant he had been sitting there working through something for a while. "Sit down," he said. She sat. "Walk me through it," he said. "All of it." She did. 15 minutes. She laid it out clean and linear. The supply dates, the quantities, the pattern of shortfalls that corresponded exactly with Calloway's purchasing cycle. The margin Dooley would have been keeping the fact that Calloway had written this letter because he was running low on his own stock and assumed the arrangement was still in place. Wesley listened without interrupting once. When she finished, he sat back. He assumed nothing had changed, Wesley said. He assumed no one was paying attention, she said. Because no one was. He said it flatly, without self-pity, the same way he'd said, I let it go 3 weeks ago. Just factually. Until you. What do you want to do? She said. What would you do? He said. She looked at him. I'd write Calloway back, politely. Tell him the purchasing arrangement is under review and that Roan Fork will be in touch. Give him nothing to panic about. And then I'd talk to a lawyer in town, she said. Because what Dooley did was theft. What Calloway did was receive stolen goods. That's not a ranch matter anymore, that's a legal matter. And if you handle it legally and cleanly, you can recover some of what was taken. Wesley was quiet. A lawyer, he said. A good one, she said. Do you know one? I knew one, he said. Martha's family's lawyer. He handled the ranch's legal matters before. He paused. I haven't spoken to him since she died. Then it's time, she said. Write to him this week. He looked at her across the desk. You came to this ranch to cook, he said. I came to this ranch to keep it running, she said. Cooking is part of that, so is this. He held her eyes. Yes, he said finally. It is. He pulled a sheet of paper toward him and picked up the pen. I'll write to Calloway today, and to James Whitfield, the lawyer, tomorrow. Good, she said. She stood. Cora, she stopped. Sit back down, he said. Please. She sat. He put the pen down. He looked at it, then at her. I need to ask you something, he said. And I need you to answer me straight, because I don't know how to ask it any other way. All right, she said. Is this a place you can stay? He said. Not because it needs you. Not because Lily is happy. Not because of Boone or Cap or Estes or any of the rest of it. He stopped. Is this a place you can stay because you want to be here? The room was very quiet. She heard the fire from the kitchen. She heard the men in the yard. She heard faintly Lily's voice somewhere talking to the dog, probably in that serious instructional tone she used when she was explaining something important to an animal. Yes, she said. It is. He held her gaze for a long moment. Then he nodded once slowly, the way a man nods when he's accepting something real. Then, he said, I'd like to talk about making that official. She looked at him. The position, he said, and then quietly, and eventually if you're willing something more than the position. She was quiet for a moment. Ask me again, she said, after the Calloway matter is resolved. After the lawyer. After the spring work is done. Why then? Because, she said, I want you to ask me when there's nothing urgent to solve, when it's just a question. That's a fair condition, he said. Most of mine are, she said. She stood and went back to the kitchen. Churg. Spring came to Roan Fork Ranch the way it always came to that part of Texas. Fast, and then suddenly everywhere, like a decision that had been made somewhere else and only just arrived. The work expanded with it. More hands. The roundup. The long days that started before light and ended after dark. The kitchen ran. It ran the way a good kitchen runs, like something alive, like something with its own logic and rhythm that the rest of the ranch oriented around without being told to. Breakfast at 5:30. Midday delivered to the field. Supper at 6. The coffee always on. The bread always going. The particular smell of a working kitchen heat and fat and something sweet underneath constant now, as fixed a feature of Roan Fork as the well or the fence line. Hatch had become without ceremony or official designation her assistant. He watched the coffee with the devotion of a man who has found his calling. He learned slowly and with great personal investment how to make biscuits not as good as hers, not yet, but recognizable as the same species. She let him try every Friday and told him honestly how close he was getting. Denny had stopped performing. This was the change she was most quietly proud of, not because she'd done anything to cause it directly, but because she'd given him something more useful than an audience. She'd given him genuine responsibility, the vegetable garden she'd started at the side of the kitchen, which required daily attention and produced results that were measurable and real, and entirely his to be proud of. It turned out good at growing things. He talked to the plants. She didn't mention that she'd noticed. Carlito Ortega and his brother Miguel stayed on through spring. Carlito had learned by some private route that she'd been the one to suggest the chair near the stove for first-timers on cold nights. He'd never brought it up directly. He just made sure every cold morning that there was extra wood stacked inside the kitchen door before she got up. It was there every morning. She never asked who brought it. She knew. The Calloway matter was resolved in March. James Whitfield, the lawyer, a small, precise man who wore his hat indoors until she asked him not to, came out to the ranch twice. He reviewed the ledger evidence she'd compiled. He wrote 3 letters. He received 2 responses. On the 3rd week of March, Calloway paid a settlement, not the full amount, but enough. Enough to restock the cellar properly. Enough to repair the bunkhouse roof without stretching the spring budget. Enough to do the things Wesley had been putting off because the margin had never been there. Wesley told her the number the evening the settlement came through. He came to the kitchen after supper and sat at the table and told her the amount and what it meant for the ranch's position going forward. She poured 2 cups of coffee and sat across from him. "It's enough," she said. "It's enough," he agreed. "Whitfield did good work," she said. "You did good work," he said. "Whitfield used what you built." She didn't argue with that. They sat for a while in the particular silence of 2 people who have done something hard together and are sitting on the other side of it. Then Wesley said, "It's not urgent right now." She looked up. "No Calloway to resolve," he said. "No storm. No ledger problem." He looked at her steadily across the table. "Just a question." She held her cup in both hands. "Cora Morgan," he said. "I'd like you to stay here permanently, not as the cook, as—" He stopped. Started again. "I'm asking if you'd be willing to build something here, with me, for Lily, for—" He stopped again. He was turning the brim of his hat with his thumb under the table. She could hear it. "I'm not good at this," he said. "You're doing fine," she said. "I haven't even gotten to the question yet." "Wesley," she said. "Yes." He looked at her. "Yes." "Yes," she said again. "Ask me the actual question properly sometime when you find the words, but the answer is yes." He sat very still for a moment. Then he said, "I'll find the words." "I know you will," she said. "You're not a man who does things halfway." "No," he said. "I'm not." She stood and took both cups to the basin and washed them. Behind her she heard his chair push back, heard him stand. Heard him come to stand near, not close, not yet, but near the way he'd been moving toward her in small, deliberate increments for months. "Lily's going to want to say," he said. "Lily already approves of you," she said. "She told me 3 weeks ago." "She did." She said, Cora said, and I am quoting exactly, "He peels apples right." A pause. "That's her standard," he said. "She's 5, Cora said. "Her standards are practical." He laughed. A real laugh this time, not the shape of one, not the almost of one. A real laugh from the chest unguarded filling the kitchen, the way warmth fills a room when the fire is properly built. She hadn't heard him laugh before. Not like that. She kept her hands in the basin so he wouldn't see her smile. That summer, 3 different outfits sent riders to Roan Fork with offers for Cora Morgan. She turned them all down at the kitchen door, politely, without consulting anyone, and went back to work. Word spread the way. Word spreads in that part of Texas fast and thorough and unimpeded by anything like privacy. People began to say the woman at Roan Fork doesn't move. They said it with a kind of respect that is usually reserved for landmarks, for things that have become part of the geography of a place. Estes came back in the fall, his hands fully healed his finger with its small white scar. He rode in on a Tuesday afternoon and came straight to the kitchen and sat down at the table without being invited the way a man sits in a place he knows he's welcome. She put coffee in front of him. "How are the hands?" she said. He spread them on the table. "Good as they're going to get." "Good enough to work. Good enough for everything," he said. He looked at her. "I heard about the Calloway settlement." "It's resolved," she said. "I heard about other things too," he said. She raised her eyebrows. "That Wesley Hale is a different man than he was last fall," Estes said. "That the ranch is running clean. That there's a little girl with ribbon in her hair who can braid straw better than any hand on the payroll." "Lily's been practicing," she said. "And," Estes said, "that the woman who was unwanted on arrival has become the reason Roan Fork is standing." She set the coffee pot down. "The ranch is standing," she said, "because everyone on it does their job." "Including you," he said. "Including me," she said. He picked up his cup. "You're happy." It wasn't a question. It was an observation delivered with the authority of a man who had looked at a lot of faces, in a lot of conditions, and knew the difference between someone performing contentment and someone living it. She thought about the blanket on her shoulders and the fire rebuilt in the night. She thought about Wesley's laugh in the kitchen. She thought about Lily and the dog and the straw braiding and the chair near the stove and the flour barrels finely arranged the right way. She thought about Cap saying make it again soon and Denny talking to the garden and Hatch watching the coffee like his life depended on it. She thought about what home feels like when you've earned it, not been given it, not stumbled into it, but built it the same way you build a fire. Carefully, piece by piece, starting with what's available. "Yes," she said, "I am." The last offer came in October. It was the best one. A brand new outfit north of San Antonio, more money than she'd ever been offered in her life. A kitchen that would have made her weep 2 years ago, every resource she could have asked for. She read the letter at the kitchen table. Wesley read it over her shoulder. She'd handed it to him without explanation when he came in, and he'd read it standing behind her, and when he finished, he set it back on the table and stood there. She folded it. She stood up. She walked to the stove and put the letter in the fire. She watched it go. Then she picked up her ladle and turned back to the pot that needed stirring. "Breakfast in 20 minutes, she said. Wesley stood at the table watching her. She didn't turn around, but she heard it the sound of a man who has just witnessed something and is deciding how to hold it. He pulled out a chair and sat down. "I'll set the table," he said. "You've never set the table," she said. "I know," he said. "Show me where the plates are." She looked at him over her shoulder. "Same place they've always been," she said. He stood and got the plates, and he set the table, and she made breakfast. And outside, the morning was coming in fast and clean over the Roan Fork land, and the men were stirring in the bunkhouse, and the dog was at the fence post waiting for Lily. And somewhere in the little room off the kitchen, a 5-year-old girl with ribbon in her hair was waking up in the only home she remembered, which was exactly where she was supposed to be. Cora Morgan had arrived at Roan Fork Ranch as the woman they didn't want. She stayed as the reason the place had a heartbeat. And that was not something anyone, not the men who had bet against her, not the foremen from other outfits, not the cold, not the storm, not the grief that had lived in this place like a second tenant, could ever take back.